So, what happens when one literary giant decides to take on another? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating literary feud where the celebrated 20th century writer J.B. Priestley takes direct aim at one of Charles Dickens's most debated novels, Hard Times. Let's get into why this classic became such a battleground. To really get why Priestley's takedown was so huge, you first have to understand what he was aiming at. For a long time, Dickens's Hard Times was held up by a certain group of critics as this uniquely important book, a really powerful critique of industrial society. But as you're about to see, not everybody was buying it. J.B. Priestley, for one, didn't just disagree. He was absolutely scathing about it. He called all that academic praise for Hard Times one of the most foolish statements of this age. I mean, that's not just a bad review. That's like a declaration of war in the world of literature. So what exactly got him so fired up? Well, he was pushing back against this really powerful academic opinion, one that was championed by a hugely influential Cambridge critic named F.R. Leavis. The argument went something like this. Because of its sharp social commentary, Hard Times was the only Dickens novel that was truly worth our time. Priestley didn't just disagree with this idea. He basically took a sledgehammer to it. He wasn't just trying to poke a few holes in the argument. No, he was going for a complete and total reversal of that opinion, turning all that praise for Hard Times completely on its head. And you can't get much clearer than this. On one side, you have the academics saying Hard Times is the only Dickens novel worth reading, and Priestley's comeback that it's actually the least worth reading of all his major works. Wow, that is a bold, bold claim. Let's see how he tries to back it up. All right, so Priestley's takedown really rests on two main pillars. The first one, and this is probably the most damning thing you can say about a novelist, was his critique of the art itself. He argued that before you can even get to the book's message, you have to look at it as a novel. And on that score, he felt it was a total artistic failure. And here's the thing. Priestley's point wasn't just that Hard Times was a bad book. It was that it was a bad Dickens book. He claimed it completely failed to live up to the incredible standard that Dickens himself had set with masterpieces like Bleak House. And he brings the receipts. He points to what he sees as these glaring flaws. The writing is just full of these over-the-top theatrical statements. The characters aren't real people, they're just flat caricatures. And the emotion is all muddled and melodramatic. But the biggest sin of all? He says it's missing that special, weird, grotesque poetic genius that makes Dickens, well, Dickens. But Priestley wasn't done yet. He wasn't just going after the novel's artistry. His argument went even deeper, questioning the very foundation the book was built on, its authenticity. I mean, did Dickens even know what he was writing about? And this right here is the knockout punch of his whole argument. Priestley just comes out and says it. For a book that's supposed to be the great novel about industrial England, Dickens simply didn't know enough about his subject. He was an outsider looking in, and according to Priestley, it really, really showed. Priestley then lays out Dickens's so-called research for the book. And honestly, it feels pretty thin. A few horrifying glimpses of a factory town after one of his public readings, a single brief visit to a strike in Preston where he felt sympathy but found, quote, no drama. The conclusion was pretty clear. Dickens was writing about a world he had only ever glanced at. And for Priestley, that's the real tragedy of the book, its biggest missed opportunity. He argues that if Dickens had actually known Coketown, the industrial setting of the novel, he wouldn't have just seen dirt and misery. He would have found what he always found everywhere else, hidden beauty, warm relationships, and all those wonderfully strange characters that really defined his genius. So Priestley's final verdict on the novel's setting is just devastating. He concludes that Coketown isn't a real living place brought to life by a master storyteller. Nope, it's just a tool. It's a piece of propaganda that was designed simply to make a point. So after all of these critiques on the art, on the authenticity, we finally get to the absolute heart of the debate. Priestley's argument forces us to face this timeless question, one that's just as relevant today as it was then. This constant tension between a masterpiece and its message. And this is where Priestley's critique stops being just about Dickens and starts being a challenge to all of us. He admits that, hey, we might agree with Dickens's message, we might be on his side, but he issues this warning. We shouldn't lie to ourselves and pretend that a bad or unsatisfactory novel is a masterpiece just because it happens to support our own point of view. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, doesn't it?
When you're looking at any work of art, a book, a movie, a song that has a strong social or political message, how do you balance its artistic quality with its purpose? Where do you draw that line? It's a tough one, for sure, and Priestley's epic takedown of hard times is the perfect case study for that exact dilemma.